Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another live streaming of basic transfer pricing. We will discuss tonight the case of Altera. Nilagay mo ba, Hari? Na Altera? Altera Corporation versus the CAR or Commissioner of Internal Revenue of the United States. No, this is a case ng transfer pricing. I would like to say thank you muna sa mga subscribers po natin dito sa basic transfer pricing. Ilan na tayo ngayon as of now? January 18, 2021.
387.
Oh, 386 lang kanina pagtingin ko ah. So, we have 387 subscribers. Tonight, January 18, 2021. Imagine, no? Pag, alam nyo, very particular ako pag nag-change na yung year. Kasi ibig sabihin may something have changed also, no? Nag-change yung age mo, nag-change na yung mundo, no? Something that you can be happy about. Kasi, bakit? Kasi nag-ano ka na eh. May dadagdag na naman na another life of gift of life to you another year, no? So, thank you very much sa ating mga subscribers, and for those po na hindi pa nag-subscribe, please subscribe to our channels. And since tapos na po natin, na-discuss na natin yung mga laws ng transfer pricing, the basis of transfer pricing, the OECD transfer pricing guidelines. Imagine, no, pinagtiyagaan natin yun for how many months yun, Hari?
10 months.
Hindi, bago lang tong transfer pricing eh. August lang to eh.
Transfer pricing.
Oo, September, October, November, December, January. Oh, magpa 5 months. August to inumpisan eh, no? So, natapos natin yung 2017 OECD Transfer Pricing Guidelines. Pinagtiyagaan talaga natin yun. Bakit? Kasi gusto ko, bago ako pumunta sa mga ibang content na, although still transfer pricing, pero yung pinaka-core niya, o doon siya naka-anchor, na-discuss natin, no? Kasi pwede nating balikan yun as we go along. Bawa, yun yung kagandahan po, no? Yung iba kasi ayaw nilang to go back to the basic. Gusto nila, jump na kaagad sila sa mga complicated na bagay. Hindi muna alamin yung basic. Yun yung tinatawag na shortcut. No? So, bibigyan ka ngayon ng mga complicated na situation, dapat alam mo yung basic. Bakit? Kasi kahit ano man ka-complicated yung case, if alam mo yung basic, madali mo siyang i-resolve. Pero kung complicated yun, nasa harap mo, hindi mo alam ano yung basic, you don't know how to resolve it. No? Madali kasi i-resolve kung alam mo. At saka lalong-lalo na, sabi na natin sa mga taxation case is about the law. So ano pinaka-importante doon? Alam mo yung batas. Why? Kasi pag alam mo yung batas, alam mo i-resolve kahit ano pang problema, no, sa taxation. Kaya nga yung iba hirap na sa taxation kasi kulang ka sa basic. Pero kung master mo yung basic, hindi ka mahihirapan. Why? Kasi no matter how complicated the situation, no, the problem in taxation, alam mo siyang isa-isahin at i-apply yung basic, no? Kaya nga may kasabihan tayo na in life daw, if everything in your life becomes complicated, always go back to the basic, no? Kasi sometimes tayo lang naman nagko-complicate sa buhay natin. And then pagka nandiyan na yung problema, sabihin mo, ay, sunod-sunod yung hampas ng alon sa buhay ko. For all you know, kung alam mo yung basic, ikaw lang din pala yung nagdadala ng alon sa buhay mo. No? It can be na naging magulo yung buhay mo. Kasi you respond to the situation or to the problem na sobra-sobra, no? Na hindi naman dapat pansinin, pinapansin mo pa, binibigyan mo pa ng weight o lalo mo kinocomplicate, no? So sometimes, kahit gaano pa ka-complicated yung life, always go back to the basic. Kasi pag nandyan na yung basic, lahat niyan mariresolve mo, ma-apply mo. That's why, yung basic talaga yung transfer pricing, ginawa natin, na-discuss na natin. So, anytime na meron tayong complicated na cases, pwede nating balikan. Nandiyan na sa YouTube channel natin. No? Okay, so this is the first live streaming natin that we will discuss case. No? yung iba, kung mapapansin natin ninyo, yung laman ng ating YouTube channel, una yung mga cases that were discussed during our certificate program in transfer pricing. No, we offer a certificate program in transfer pricing for 5 days, and the fee is 500, no, 25,000, no, 25,000 per head for the 5 days. No, and then dyan sa certificate program na yan, may mga cases tayong ina-assign sa participant, and then sila yung nagre-report, no? So these mga cases na una nating in-upload, those are cases discussed by our participants in the 5-day certificate program in transfer pricing. And kung mapapansin ninyo, mga ibang cases dyan na parang sinamarize lang naman para meron tayong idea. And ito na, since tapos na natin yung OECD transfer pricing guidelines, although marami tayong i-discuss sa inyo, and we will also entertain question, no? So, ginilagay mo ba, Hari? Na i-chat mo sila na pwede po tayong question and answer in transfer pricing, no? So, this is your chance na. Kasi yung iba, may mga agam-agam tayo sa transfer pricing, especially dito sa 1709 na form, and then dito sa threshold, sino ba talaga yung dapat mag-prepare ng 1709 na form. So, pwede po tayo magtanong at sasagutin po natin based doon sa ating mga revenue regulations issued by the BIR. No? And you can also ask about transfer pricing audit. You can also ask about transfer pricing documentation, about the arm's length methods in transfer pricing, yung comparability analysis, paano tayo mag-compare, paano tayo mag-adjust, no? Kasi yung core talaga ng transfer pricing is comparability analysis. Why? Because during the comparison, compare ka ng related party at saka independent transactions, pagka may nakita ka na ngayon na discrepancy, you have to adjust to make them similar. No? At yun ang pinakaasam-asam ng mga tax authorities, yung comparability adjustment na kailangan mo mag-adjust to make them, to make the related party transactions and independent transactions similar. So you have to adjust, and that adjustment will usually result to deficiency income taxes. No? Kasi ang transfer pricing, wala siyang pakialam sa value added tax. Ano lang pinapakialaman niya? Only the income tax, no? So, income tax lang. Masakit sa mata yung Hari, yung aircon. Patayin mo na lang. Malakas ang hangin diretso sa mata. Okay. So, we discussed first time, ito yung case ng Altera Corporation versus the Commissioner of Internal Revenue or the US. Sino po ba at ano itong Altera Corporation? Ito yung Altera Corporations, binili na siya ng Intel, no? Nagmamanufacture siya ng mga gadgets na ginagamit po sa computer, no? Yung ano ba yan, yung logic devices. So ano yung mga sample ng mga logic devices, Hari?
Mga processors, ma'am.
Processors, ano pa?
Mga chips, no?
Chips. No? So in short, ginagamit siya sa computer, no? Sa technology. So binili siya ng Intel. So, ano bang ginawa nitong Altera Corporations na inassess po siya ng yung counterpart po ng BIR sa US is the IRS. So, inassess po yung Altera dito ng IRS on transfer pricing, no? Okay. So, ano po ba itong kaso na to? This case is nasa ano pa to, ang decision dito is nasa Court of Appeals pa to. But yung decision ng Court of Tax Appeals is in favor of Altera, at yung Commissioner of IRS, Commissioner of Internal Revenue, nag-appeal pa po sa Supreme Court. No? Inappeal nila ito, kaya magkakaroon pa to ng hearing ulit. Hindi pa to tapos na kaso na to. But tapos na siya doon sa Court of Appeals, although sabi pa natin, nag-file ng motion for new trial yung, CIR dito. Commissioner of Internal Revenue, hindi pa to tapos kasi kahit na the decision is in favor of Altera, nag-appeal pa yung CIR, no? Commissioner of Internal Revenue. Okay, so ano po ba itong appeal na to? This was argued and submitted on October 16, 2018. No? Okay. Ano yung issue dito? The issue here is the validity of the regulations po ng US. Ito yung 26 USC Section 482. Ano po yung Section 482? This is the transfer pricing law of the United States. And if you try to read Section 482 of the United States, the same din po siya na Section 50 of the internal revenue po natin. Ano yung nakalagay dyan sa internal revenue? National Internal Revenue Code natin, Section 50. Ano yung nakalagay dyan? Yung power of the commissioner to allocate, distribute, and allocate, appropriate, no? Yung income. Kung yung income na yan within the group, but purpose na i-allocate mo siya, yung income and expenses to avoid, no? Yung tax evasion na hindi sila magbabayad because may ginamit sila ng mga tax minimization scheme para mapababa yung kanilang binabayaran na tax, no? So, ano yung problema po dito or the issue in the Altera Corporation? So, sabi natin si Altera, manufacturer po siya ng mga chips, no, yung mga ginagamit sa computer. At ngayon, ano na siya, ang may-ari sa kanya yung Intel na, no? So anong issue dito? The validity of the Treasury regulations implementing 26 US code na Section 482. Ano po ba yung sinasabi ng Section 482? Nasabi ko, ito yung equivalent or the same wordings with Section 50 of the National Internal Revenue Code po natin. Mind you, because our tax laws here in the Philippines is patterned after that of the IRC or the Internal Revenue Code of the US. Okay. So, anong sinasabi dito sa Section 482 of the IRS o IRC, Internal Revenue Code? It provides for the allocation of income and deductions among related parties. So, ano pala yun? Income and deductions among related parties, no? So, allocation, ibig sabihin i-allocate mo kasi sometimes there are joint or cost contribution arrangement. So, anong gagawin mo? You allocate the income and deductions for those transactions. Okay. So, the panel first held that the Commissioner of Internal Revenue did not exceed the authority delegated to him by Congress under Section 26 of the Section 482 of the IRC or the Internal Revenue Code of the U.S. The panel explained that Section 482 does not speak directly to whether the commissioner may require parties to a qualified cost-sharing arrangement or QC is A, to share employees na compensation. So anong issue po dito? Ano yung pinag-usapan dito? Yung stock compensation. No? Anong nangyari dito? Hindi na tayo makasulat, no? Kasulat ba tayo sa board? Ito. No? Ang issue po dito sa Altera, isang issue lang yan although may royalty payment pa dito, yung stock-based. Yung stock-based compensation siya, included ba siya sa research and development, no? Cost. Okay. No, so yun yung isang issue dyan. Aside from the payment of royalty na issue, no? So anong isang issue dyan sa Altera? Anuhin mo na yung camera. Aray. No? So yung isang issue dyan is the stock-based compensation research and development cost na included ba siya sa qualified cost sharing arrangement kasi may dinidevelop po sila no, na product or project. Kasi since alam naman natin na yung minamanufacture nila are logic devices. So, ano yun? Ang malaking exposure nila dyan is for the research and development, no? To develop that product. Hindi pwedeng wala silang research and development kasi technology po yung dinidevelop nila. So, ang tanong dyan, along the way, mayroong stock-based compensation yung mga employees na hindi sinama ng Altera doon sa research and development, no, sa pag-develop nila ng product. So ano sabi ng IRS? Dapat yung stock-based compensation, since expenses yan ng research, i-allocate mo. Paano mo i-allocate? Siyempre, yung total stock-based compensation mo during the year, since alam naman natin na yung mga tao na binigyan mo ng stock-based compensation, sila din yung mga tao na kasama doon sa research and development na gumawa. So, since itong research and development natin, if the purpose is for the development of the product, and if you try to look at sa ibang mga legislation, dapat 10% lang ng sales ang research and development para pwede mo siyang i-outright expense, no? So, since ang purpose of the research and development is to develop a new product, then hindi mo siya pwedeng i-expense. So, just like, since kasama doon sa research and development yung stock-based compensation, so ano siya dapat? I-capitalize mo rin kasi kasama siya sa research and development. Eh, ang problema dito sa situation na to, hindi sinama ng, hindi inallocate ng Altera yung stock-based compensation, no? In-outright expense nila. Kasi, anong mangyayari? Pagka ang research and development for the development of a new product, ano yun? Capitalize yun and then i-amortize mo later on. Pag hindi mo siya kinapitalize, in-outright expense mo siya, anong effect noon sa net income na current? Napakalaki. Bakit? Kasi since lalaki yung expenses mo, liliit yung income mo. So, anong mangyayari? Pag dinis-allow mo yung stock-based compensation na ginawa mo siyang part of the qualified cost sharing agreement to develop a new product. So, since hindi mo siya expense lahat, lalaki yung income mo. No? So, yun yung magiging effect. So, ang gusto ng IRS na i-allocate niya yung ibang mga stock-based compensation since para naman yun sa mga tao na nagtatrabaho din kasama sa research and development, i-allocate niya yung stock-based compensation para hindi lahat ma-outright expense. So, hindi liliit yung income ng Altera during the year. So, ibig sabihin, magbabayad talaga siya ng income, no? Okay. So, ang una nila na kinwestiyon dito yung Section 482, yun ang batas itself, no? So, para sa ibang lawyers, strategy nila yun eh. Pagka medyo hirap sila i-justify, questionin mo yung batas para tumagal yung kaso. No, naririnig ko yan sa mga practicing lawyer eh. Tsaka sa ano pa, sa mga professors sa constitutional law, yun ang sinasabi nila. Now, sige, wala na daw talaga silang magawa. Question the law, no? The constitutionality of the law para tumagal yung kaso. Pero dahil ngayon, meron na tayong rules of court and procedure na binago na at saka mabilis na yung proseso sa korte, I don't think so. Okay. Okay, so the panel explained that Section 482 does not speak directly to whether the commissioner may require parties to a qualified cost-sharing arrangement to share employees' stock compensation cost in order to receive the tax benefits associated with entering into a qualified cost-sharing arrangement. The panel held that the Treasury reasonably interpreted Section 482 as an authorization to require internal allocation method in the qualified cost-sharing arrangement context, provided that the cost and income allocated are proportionate to the economic activity of the related parties. So ano yun? Pwede daw na yung allocation methods in the qualified cost-sharing arrangement that provides that the cost and income allocation are proportionate to the economic activity of the related parties. So, pwede yun, pero kailangan proportionate siya with the economic entity of the related parties. Okay. And concluded that the regulations are a reasonable method for achieving the results required by the statute. Accordingly, the regulations were entitled to deference under Chevron USA Inc. versus Natural Resources Defense Council Inc. 467 US 837 1984. No? So yun po yung issue. Okay, so the panel held that the regulation at issue were not arbitrary and capricious under the Administrative Procedure Act. No? So, in this case, ano yung sinabi nila, yung panel daw, ang ginawa nila hindi arbitrary and capricious. No? So, sino yung nag-dissent na judge dito? Judge O'Malley would find, as the tax court did, that 26 CFR Section 1482-7A dito is invalid as arbitrary and capricious, no? So pagka sino yung question na invalid and arbitrary and capricious po yung decision, then ito yung dissenting opinion lang po ng isang judge, no? Na invalid, arbitrary, and capricious. Okay. So, makita mo yan lang yung counsel nila, sobrang dami. No? Sobra. Okay. Okay. So, dito sa appeal na to, anong pinipresent po dito? May shoutout na ba tayo, Hari?
Meron po, madam.
O, sige, shoutout tayo.
Ang shoutout po natin, si Ma'am Fe Herrera.
Talaga.
Good evening daw, ma'am. Congrats sa 10,000 subscribers.
Thank you, Miss Fe, and good evening. Congrats din sa iyo, ha. Alam kong busy ka kasi lahat ng accountants ngayon busy dahil, di ba, yung ang daming ipa-file itong January. Tapos, mayroon pang renewal ng mga permits. So, yung accountants ngayon talaga are very busy. And yun yung mga, alam mo, yung iba na hindi sila, parang hindi naman talaga sila sa trabaho. Nalulungkot yan sila at saka nahihirapan. Pero kung ikaw na masipag at saka proactive ka sa trabaho mo, exciting nga eh. Bakit exciting? Kasi ang dami-dami mong kliyente, ang dami-dami mong ginagawa, no? So, ganyan si Ma'am Fe. Talaga napakasipag. Wala na?
Siya lang po, madam.
Ha?
Siya lang po yung nag-shoutout.
Pero ilan na?
Viewers mo lang na 7 viewers.
Okay, sige. Hindi pala tayo nag-invite, no? Kina Banji. Sayang din yun.
Chat ko.
Sige, chat mo siya. Kasi sumasagot din yan eh. Tsaka sayang din. Ilan sila doon na dapat manood. Ay, pati sa Negros, saka sa Cebu, sa Iloilo. Alam nyo, dapat nag-i-invite talaga tayo, Hari. Sa Facebook. No? Invite natin sila. Kasi yung iba, hindi rin nila alam eh. No? Okay. So, ano po yung appeal na to? No? Okay. So, the appeal presents the question of the validity of the Section 482. Ito nga yung sabi natin na transfer pricing law. No? Under which related business entities must share the cost of employee stock compensation in order for their cost-sharing arrangement to be classified as qualified cost-sharing arrangement. No? So, dapat daw yung cost ng employee stock compensation isi-share, no, ina-allocate, hindi yung ina-outright expense lang. So, although the case appears complex, no, kasi actually hindi lang to stock-based compensation ang issue, may mga iba pa, no. The dispute between the Department of the Treasury and the taxpayer is relatively straightforward. The parties agree that under the governing tax statute, the arm's length standard applies, but they disagree about how arm's length standards applies, but they disagree about how the standard may be met. No? Okay. The taxpayer argues the Treasury must employ a specific method to meet the arm's length standard. No? So yun yung sabi ng taxpayer. A comparability analysis using comparable transactions between unrelated business entities. Treasury disagrees that the arm's length standard requires the specific comparability method in all cases. Instead, the standard generally requires the Treasury reach an arm's length result of tax parity between controlled and uncontrolled business entities with respect to the transactions at issue here. The governing statutes allows Treasury to apply a purely internal method of allocation, distributing the cost of employee stock options in proportion to the income enjoyed by its related taxpayer. Okay. Kaya, ito lang, kaya ko po binabasa ito sa iyo. Ito na yung opinion ng mga judges, no? Okay. Our task, of course, is not to assess the better tax policy nor the wisdom of either approach, but rather to examine whether Treasury's regulations are permitted under the statute, no? So, permitted ba yan under the statute? Yung lalo na yung proseso, no? Dito sa atin, di ba, yung mga laws natin sa taxation, sino talaga ang nagda-draft niyan? The lower court or the House of Representatives, no? Okay, so yun yung limitations niya. Applying the familiar tools used to examine administrative agency regulations, we conclude that the regulations withstand scrutiny, no? Therefore, we reverse the judgment of the tax court. No? Okay. Wala pa rin question? Okay. Maganda itong Altera kaso lang sobrang haba, no? Okay. Actually, dito sa mga cases, sinasabi pa dito yung mga history, no? History na ano. Hindi ba tabingi yung ating, ano?
Hindi naman po ba?
Kasi doon siya nakatutok sa whiteboard.
Hindi naman po.
Okay. Sige. Alam mo yun, na-observe ko, Hari, pagka gumamit pa tayo ng TV, lalo siyang matagal, lalo siyang madelay. Okay. Sige. For many years, Congress and the Treasury have been concerned with American businesses avoiding taxes through the creation and use of related business entities. So in the last several decades, Congress has directed particular attention to the potential for tax abuse by multinational corporations with foreign subsidiaries. No? So, yung mga multinational corporations, may mga foreign subsidiaries. Why? Sinasadya naman nila yan because yung mga foreign subsidiaries, kung saan man yan sila naroon, the company, no, that put up these foreign subsidiaries are also benefited on their presence. So, if, for example, the parent business entity is in a high tax jurisdiction, nasa high tax jurisdiction siya, meaning ang laki or ang taas ng tax rate ng tax sa kanilang bansa, no? Samantalang yung foreign subsidiary naman is in a low tax jurisdiction. So, ibig sabihin, low tax jurisdiction, yung mga tax rates ng tax doon, hindi masyado mataas, no? So, the business enterprise can shift cost and revenue between the related entities so that more taxable income is allocated to the lower tax jurisdiction, no? So similarly, a parent and foreign subsidiary can enter into significant tax avoiding cost sharing arrangement, no? So ay pakita ko lang sa inyo kasi ito yung dahilan na nagkaroon ng kaso or transfer pricing adjustment itong Altera, no? So ito yung scheme, no? So ito yung A, no? Si A company, ito yung parent. O ito yung mga subsidiaries niya. Halimbawa si B at saka si C, no? And then kung dagdagan mo pa yan, ito si B, may mga subsidiaries din to, at saka si C, no? May mga D, E, F, G, no? So, halimbawa si A, meron siyang dalawang subsidiaries, no? And then, from here, itong si F, which is a subsidiary of C, si A, meron ding share dyan kay F, no? So, paano nagkakaroon ng transfer pricing dyan? Nasabi natin, high tax jurisdiction, no? So, halimbawa dito kay A, the tax rate, no? Tax is 35%, no? Corporate income tax. Dito naman kay B, yung tax is 20%, no? So, dito naman kay C, also 20%. Dito kay F, 5%, no? Dito naman kay E, 15%, no? Halimbawa, 10%. Okay. 16%, no? Okay. So, what happened? Sabi nila, assign mo o ibigay mo yung malaking income doon sa company or related parties na maliit lang yung babayaran na tax para makasave ka ng tax. So, in this example, sino yung pinakamababa na tax rate? Si F, no? Si F. So, ito yung pinakamababa kasi yung iba, 10%, 15%. Pinakamalaki yung kay A, which is 35%. So, paano yung scheme na gagawin nila para yung maraming income kay F mapunta at maliit lang yung babayaran ng tax. So yung iba, since mataas yung income, hindi sila maglalabas ng income na malaki doon. Kanino sila maglalabas ng malaking income? Dito kay F. At ano yung babawasan nila? Babawasan nila yung income dito sa iba, no? Kasi group of companies lang, madali lang nilang i-assign. Bawasan nila yung income dito o kaya taasan nila na deductions. Dito naman, andito lahat yung malaking income na ilalagay nila so that makatipid sila sa pagbabayad ng taxes. Kasi yan po yung nangyari dito sa Altera, no? Kaya ano sabi ng US dito? Yung tax na malaki na nagbabayad dapat ng royalty payment, binayaran niya ng royalty payment yung sa Mexico, which is tax haven countries. Ano po yung tawag dito sa country na mababa yung tax haven? Bakit tax haven? Kasi doon na sila magpaparegister, doon na sila maglalagay ng mga companies nila. And sometimes it is found out under the transfer pricing audit or during the transfer pricing audit na yung mga companies na ini-establish nila dito are only shell companies, wala talagang operations. Nilagay lang nila doon at nilagyan nila ng income para lang tipid ng payment of taxes, no? So, Yun po yung scheme sa transfer pricing. May question pa? Wala. Bagay, wala naman talaga nag-question dito eh, no? Although sa susunod, ano na lang, Q&A tayo. Sa mga ano natin, tingnan mo rin pala, hindi ko ito
May
na.
comment sa...
Oo, tingnan mo kung may
Parang
comments.
napansin nga ako kanina.
Sa mga, lalo na dun sa 1709 na form, no? Kasi ito po yung ating live streaming. Meron tayong topics na dinidiscuss. But at the same time po, nag-i-entertain tayo ng Q&A, question and answers, or discussion, not really pertaining to the topic, but everything about transfer pricing, no? Pwede po nating sagutin. Kasi, at the same time, yung atin pong live streaming is a point of discussion. Kasi, hindi naman na tayo pwede mag-monopolize ng knowledge. No? Ako, hindi ko man sasabihin sa inyo na talaga well-versed ako na sa transfer pricing. You can also give your opinion at saka pwede din po kayong post ng question and then we will discuss together, no? Kasi kaya nga sabi ko sa inyo, hindi lang ito basta-basta live streaming, may point of discussion din po dito at saka yung contribution ng ideas para pakinabangan din po ng iba, no? Especially now na dito sa Pilipinas ang dami pang ngangapa sa transfer pricing, no? Although sa pag tiningnan mo itong mga kaso na to, 2003 pa, 2006, may mga celebrated cases na po sa transfer pricing ang ibang bansa, no? Okay, so may nakita ka? Yung how to fill up BIR Form 1709 at saka yung mga free seminars natin. Sige, tingnan mo dyan. Okay. So, yun po yung purpose, no? So, parent and foreign subsidiary can enter into significant tax-avoiding cost-sharing arrangement, no? Kasi bakit sila nagko-cost sharing? To avoid payment of taxes, no? So, the potential for tax abuse is generally not present when similar transactions occur between unrelated business entities. Why transfer pricing? Because sabi ng transfer pricing, kung ano man yung nangyayari within the related parties, hindi ganyan ang nangyayari between independent parties. Why? Kasi sa independent parties, there is no element of control, there is no relationship. So ano lang yung factors that determine the pricing of goods and services between unrelated parties or between independent parties? It is only the economic forces, no? Ano yun? Yung halimbawa, law of supply and demand. So yun lang yung nag-i-influence ng price at hindi yung relationship at saka yung control between related companies, no? So in those instances, it's separate unrelated entity has the incentive to maximize profit and thus to allocate cost and income consistent with economic realities. However, among related parties, those incentives do not exist, no? So hindi nag-i-exist yun sa related parties. Rather, among related parties, after-tax maximization of profit may depend on how cost and income are allocated between the parent and the subsidiary regardless of economic reality, given that after-tax profits are commonly shared, no? So ano yung after-tax profits commonly shared between related parties? O kasi bakit? Lahat yan na member of the group. Magkano yung after-tax profits nila, bawat operations. Sa traditional na multinational companies, meron yan silang national treasury. Ano yun? Doon lahat pumapasok yung income or your earnings ng company. No? Okay. Among related parties, after-tax maximization of profit may depend on how cost and income are allocated between the parent and the subsidiary regardless of economic reality, given that after-tax profits are commonly shared. No? So the concern about tax avoidance through the use of related business entities is not new. No? So, tingnan nyo ha, in the Revenue Act of 1928, so 1928 na nga, 1920s, nga po, gamit na nila yung transfer pricing tool na to. No? So, Congress granted the Secretary of the Treasury the authority to reallocate the reported income and cost of related businesses in order to prevent evasion of taxes or clearly to reflect the income of any such trades or businesses. You can just imagine na Revenue Act of 1928 po yan. No? At yan, kung makikita natin, yan yung wordings ng Section 50 of the National Internal Revenue Code po natin. No? Imagine, 1928. Kung 1928 yan, ilang taon na yan?
1928
90, no? Kasi 2021 na tayo ngayon eh. Sa 2028 siya mag 100 years, no? So 2028 at saka 1, 7, 93, 94. Ilang years na ang 1928 hanggang ngayon?
93 man.
Oh, so 93 years old na ang ano sa kanila. Eh kung 1920 mayroon na silang transfer pricing. Eh di kung 1920, hindi 101 years na. You can just imagine, no, how that transactions, halimbawa, accumulate during 101 years. No? Napakarami na nun at nangyayari sa isang transactions. No? Okay. The statute was designed to give Treasury the flexibility it needed to prevent transactions shuffling between related entities for the purpose of decreasing tax liability. Okay. The Commissioner may, in the case of two or more trades or businesses owned or controlled by the same interest, apportion, allocate, or distribute. No? Mali pala yung sinabi ko kanina, appropriate. Apportion, allocate, or distribute the income or deductions between or among them as may be necessary in order to prevent evasion. No? Paano sila naka-prevent ng evasion? Ano ba yung evasion na usually ginagawa? The shifting of profits, no? Kaya nga sabi natin, paano nila isi-shift yung profits? Since si B, halimbawa, mas mataas kaysa kay F na 5% lang, isi-shift niya ngayon, instead na yung income belongs to B, isi-shift niya ngayon kay F, which is the tax haven countries. So instead na sa kanya yung income, doon niya dadaan, hindi na siya mayroon ng income, so hindi na siya matatax at a higher rate. Okay, so ano pa yung tax evasion na mangyayari? Making of fictitious sales, no? So wala naman talagang sales fictitious. And other methods frequently adopted for the purpose of milking and in order clearly to reflect their true tax liability. Okay. The purpose of the statute was to place a controlled taxpayer on a tax parity with an uncontrolled taxpayer. Okay. So, Commissioner versus First Security Bank of Utah. So, yun yung case. In short, the primary aim of the statute was to prevent tax evasion by related business taxpayers. So dito, diniscuss na rin sa case, yun yung kagandahan sa mga cases pag nagbasa ka. Kasi dinidiscuss nila kung ano yung history, no? Nung mga, kasi dito kine-question nila yung batas, yung section 482. So ano yun, binalikan ngayon ng court kung ano ba yung history ng mga tax laws, no, way back and applicable to the present. So in 1934, the Commissioner adopted regulations implementing the statute and first adopted the familiar arm's length standard. Ano ba yung familiar arm's length standard? No? Ito yung sabi natin na the arm's length standard or the arm's length principle requires that the financial and commercial transactions between related parties should be at par or equivalent or similar with that of the independent parties. Okay, so the standard to be applied in every case is that of an uncontrolled taxpayer dealing at arm's length with another uncontrolled taxpayers, no? So, pwede din po na yun yung magiging scheme natin, or how do we treat those kind of transaction. No? So, in the context of a controlled transaction, the arm's length standard is satisfied if the result of the transaction are consistent with the results that would have been realized if uncontrolled taxpayers had engaged in the same transactions under the same circumstances. No? So the relevant regulation also noted, however, because identical transactions can rarely be located, whether a transaction produces an arm's length result generally will be determined by reference to the results of comparable transactions under comparable circumstances. So, although the Secretary adopted the arm's length standard, courts did not hold related parties to that standard. No? So, ito mga, sabi ko na nga sa inyo, kasama na to sa mga history kung ano nangyari. So, nag-start tayo kanina doon sa 1928, tapos na meron namang 1934, ano naman yung nangyari doon sa 1960. No? Kasi yung 1960, dito na talaga yung abusive transfer pricing kasi dito na nag-open yung globalization eh. No? So, yung mga multinational companies, since ready na sila, do business na sa iba't ibang mga bansa kasi open na. No? So, since the goods and services cross the border, it also carries with it the taxes. No? So, yung taxes also cross the border. So, paano mo itatax ngayon yan pagka wala na sa jurisdiction mo yung goods or the services, no? In 1960s, the problem of abusive transfer pricing practices created a new adherence to a stricter arm's length standard, no? Kasi meron ng mga abusive transfer pricing eh, no? If mapapansin niyo, may mga video tayo diyan na clippings na ni-research natin din sa YouTube. Anong sabi nila doon? The rich can afford to hire experts such that payment of taxes is becoming an option to them. No? So, pagka may kaya ka at kaya mong mag-hire ng tax expert, then so much saving is in taxes ang mangyayari sa iyo. No? So, yun yung 1960. So in response to the concerns about the under-taxation of multinational business entities, why under-taxation? Kasi hindi na sila nga nagbabayad ng tamang tax in the locals. In response to concerns about the under-taxation of multinational business entities, Congress considered reworking the tax code to resolve the difficulty posed by the application of the arm's length standard to related party transactions. Okay, so instead of asking Treasury to explore the possibility of developing and promulgating regulations which would provide additional guidelines and formula for allocation of income and deductions under 26 U.S. Code Section 482, no? Legislators believe that Section 482 authorized the Secretary to employ a profit split allocations without amendment, no? So ano itong profit split allocation? Sa profit split, halos wala ka ng comparables dito. Ano yun lang yung comparables mo? Also, those companies that uses the profit split, no? Method or allocation. Okay. So, in 1968, Congress, in treaty, Treasury finalized the first regulation tailored to the issue of intangible property development in qualified cost-sharing arrangement. So, 1968 pa, na-define na ng US ang intangibles, no? So, advance sila kaysa sa atin. Okay. So, may sinasabi siya dito na how to employ yung transfer pricing method. So, balikan po natin ano-ano yung transfer pricing methods natin, no? So, bigyan ko kayo ng matrix. Makikita pa, Hari? Erase mo nga. Sana ba yung eraser natin? Ako. Diyan na. Ito lang.
Ito.
Sa susunod siguro, gagawa na ako dyan ng flip chart. Alam mo yung isang ganyan. Tapos mag-stand na lang tayo dito. Tapos ganyan-ganyan na lang natin. Oo, flip chart. Pero yung puti naman, gamitin natin. Para lagay na lang natin dito, magkaroon tayo ng stand. Ganyan-ganyan na lang tayo sa ano. So, mas madali. Kasi ito, matagal to eh. So, ano yung mga transfer pricing methods? Okay, so we will start with the CAP method, no? So, ano yung CAP? Comparable Uncontrolled Price Method. Di ko na siya ilagay ha. Matrix lang to anyway. For the CAP method, CAP means Comparable Uncontrolled Price Method. And then, ano yung ginagamit? Since sabi natin, Comparable Uncontrolled Price Method, ano yung kino-compare? What is compared here is the price, no? And then, meron tayong tinatawag na resale price method, no? Resale price method. Ano naman ang kino-compare dito? The gross profit. Meron tayong cost plus method, no? Cost plus method, CPM. Okay? Or cost plus, no? So, cost plus method. Ano naman ang kino-compare dyan? No? Also the gross profit. Dito sa next method natin is the transactional net margin method, TNMM. Anong kino-compare naman dito? The net profit or the net margin, no? And then yung profit split. Pagdating sa profit split, hindi na ito nagko-compare. Ang kino-compare na lang dito, profit split method. Ano naman ang kino-compare dito? How the independent party split its profit, no? Pero as to the itong indicator, hindi na kasi depende paano maginagawa ang pag-split ng profit. There are two methods, no? The residual profit split method and the contribution profit split method. And sometimes, ano yung ini-split nila dito? Sometimes also the gross profit, no? Minsan net profit. So pagka ang ini-split mo is the gross profit, so since gross profit pa yung ini-split, it's an individual entity, magkiklaim pa ng kanilang operating expenses. Pero kung net profit na, dito ang ini-split mo sa profit, then multiply right away the tax due, no? So, yun po yung 5 na transfer pricing methods na ginagamit po ng transfer pricing to compare the price of the commodities of the product, no? Services or goods. So, ito po yung kino-compare. Okay. May sounds pa tayo? Okay. Okay. So, ito pong dinidiscuss natin dito, anong oras na ba? Nainuklang na. Ang dinidiscuss pa natin dito, yung batas pa lang eh. Kasi yung unang, dito sa case na to, yun po yung una na kino-question, no? Yung batas pa lang. So, nagkaroon tayo ng discussion kung paano nag-evolve yung transfer pricing law ng US, no? So, noong 1968, nagkaroon na sila ng batas about the intangible properties. Ano itong mga intangible properties? Ngayon, yung mga nagiging dispute kasi ng iba, yung residual value ng transfer pricing, intangibles, on intangibles. Kasi dati, very limited lang, no? But because of some cases na decided, kaya na-refine. So, here comes, ito na yung bagong, noong 2003, in this case, nagkaroon na ng bagong definition yung intangible. So, very crucial yun na pag define mo yung intangible, it should include the certain kind of transaction so that in the determination on what is included or should be the value of the intangibles, then it is very specific, no? Hindi magkakaroon ng loophole at hindi ma-include sa determination ng at hindi ma-tax, no? Especially in the payment of royalties. Okay? Okay. So, ang unang pinagtatalunan dito is about the law and also the nakasama pa yung methods. Kasi during the evolution of the transfer pricing law, pinagdi-discuss din ang about the transfer pricing methods. So, noong 1968, there is an approach to the problem, no? Kasi the terms na arm's length standard, no? Nominal lang siya under the regulations for 30 years. So, ano pong isang dispute dito yung transfer pricing methods. So, the 1968 regulations nila included the fourth method. And what is the fourth method sa US? Kasi ngayon, di ba, sa OECD, yan yung 5 methods. No? So, in 1968, yung 3 methods in transfer pricing ng US, nagiging 4, nagkaroon ng fourth. Ano yun? The fourth method, ano yun? Open-ended. Bakit naging open-ended ang fourth method? Kasi anong sabi ng batas? Where none of the 3 methods of pricing can reasonably be applied under the facts and circumstances as they exist in a particular case, some appropriate method of pricing other than those described or variation on such methods can be used. Okay, so just imagine, no? Open-ended. Ibig sabihin, kahit ano, basta patunayan mo that pwede mo siyang gamitin, no? Paano apply yan sa transfer pricing case. Okay. So, courts continue to employ comparability analysis but not to the exclusion of other methodologies. No? Okay. So, yan yung evolution ng transfer pricing law sa US. No? Okay. So, nagkaroon na naman sila noong 1986, no? Na yung tinatawag nila commensurate with the income standard, no? Another method naman yan sa transfer pricing. Especially yung complicity in the determination of transactions that involve intangible property. So, nagkaroon ng Tax Reform Act of 1986. And then, dito nila na-define yung arm's length standard, no? Prevented tax parity. No? Ano yung tax parity? Yung related party transactions, placing them in parity with that of the independent transactions. No? Ano yung sinabi doon sa 1986 na Tax Reform Act? No? So, in the case of transfer or license of intangible property within the meaning of Section 936(8)(3)(b), the income with respect to such transfer or license shall be commensurate with the income attributable to the intangible. So, ano yun? Commensurate with the income attributable to the intangible. Why? Kasi very complicated ang intangible. It's hard to determine or value the intangible. So, anong sinabi dito ng Tax Reform Act of 1986? Dapat daw yung income, no, on the transfer or license commensurate with the income attributable to the intangible, which is reasonable, no? Kasi paano mo ba i-value yung isang bagay? Depende sa income na ma-generate niya. Kasi halimbawa, hindi naman reasonable yun na binenta mo yung isang business halimbawa, kumikita na yun ng 100 million, no? Tapos ibebenta mo lang siya ng 20 million, no? So it doesn't commensurate with the income attributable to that business, no? Sino yung panalo? Panalo yung bumili. Sino yung lugi? Yung nagbenta, no? Since yung nagbenta at saka bumili belongs to the same group, it doesn't matter to them kung sino yung lugi, no? So, what matters? Yung valuation talaga ng intangibles before and after the sale. Kasi, sino ang may concern doon? The tax authority, kung nasaan yung intangibles at binenta niya. Why? Because the sale of the intangibles, the proper valuation of that is very important to the taxing authority where the seller of that intangible is located kasi it will be taxed in that country, no? So yung determination pa lang kung ano yung intangible na yan is very crucial. Okay. So yun na lalo yung commensurate with income clause, no? Okay. Okay. So ano pa yung problema ng tax authority when it comes to related party transactions? Ano sabi dito ng House report ng US to, ha? A fundamental problem is the fact that the relationship between related parties is different from that of unrelated parties. Siyempre, no? Ibang-iba. Related parties kayo, isa lang may-ari as compared doon sa unrelated parties na iba-ibang may-ari. So, meron sila talagang mga bagay na hindi kayang gawin ng unrelated parties as compared to the related parties. Anything under the sun, pwedeng gawin ng related parties. Why? Kasi isang tao lang nagdidesisyon. Kaya ako during my stay in the BIR, pag nag-audit na, mas gusto ko mag-audit ng individual kaysa corporations. Why? Kasi pag may findings ka na, pag may deficiency ka na, nababayaran, ang tagal bago makapag-decide ang corporation. Why? Sa dami ng hahanapin mo na signatories or yung papayag doon sa findings mo, no? So, pag hindi pumayag yung isa, i-dispute nila. So, hindi nila babayaran. So, napakatagal magtapos ng kaso pag corporation. Whereas, sa individual, isang tao lang mag-decide. Yun lang mismo proprietor. Pag sinabi ng proprietor na, okay, I will pay, then bayad na. Pero kung corporations, ang dami pang tao na mag-a-approve, no? Okay. Okay, so ano pang hirap sa transfer pricing? Yung comparables, no? Okay, so yung paghanap ng comparables are very crucial. Why? Kasi comparability is the heart of transfer pricing. And yung maghanap ka ng comparable, kasi di ba i-compare mo yung related parties with that of the independent parties. So maghanap ka ng mga independent parties wherein you can compare now your data or information of the related parties. No? Okay. Okay. No? So, ito pa yung sinabi dito ng US. The committee intends to make it clear that the industry norms or other unrelated party transactions do not provide a safe harbor minimum payment for related party intangible transfers, where taxpayers transfer intangibles with a high profit potential. The compensation for the intangible should be greater than industry averages or norms. No? Kasi ano yung magiging benchmark natin in the transfer pricing analysis? The industry norm. No? So, yung sabi dito, kung tinransfer mo yung intangibles with a high profit potential, very promising, talagang kikita. So, it goes with it na mas mataas din dapat yung remuneration or yung compensation o yung bayad doon sa intangibles na yun. No? halimbawa, binenta mo yung through research and development, may na-develop ka na uh, process na technology, no? So, na pag dinevelop mo yun, kikita ka ng malaki for the next 10 years, no? So, dapat pag binenta mo yung process na yun na na-develop mo, mas mahal siya, no? Kasi malaki yung kanyang profit potentials. Okay. Okay, so 1994-95, meron na namang regulations, no, on the arm's length standard and also on the taxable income. Okay, so ano sabi nung 1994 and 1995? Anong nakalagay? There is a regulations that set forth the methods by which income could be allocated among related parties in a manner consistent with the arm's length standard. At ano yung arm's length standard? Yun yung sinasabi natin na the very authoritative statement under Article 9 of the Model OECD Model Tax Convention. Ano yun? Where transactions between related parties in their commercial and financial and commercial transactions which is different from that of the independent parties, then by reason of those transactions, no, na hindi ni-report ng related parties, then that income pwede niyang i-report doon sa isang company na hindi na-receive yung income, and then that income should be taxed accordingly, no? But by reason of those conditions have not so accrued, so the profit could be added back to that company and taxed accordingly. So yung very powerful na statement po yan na Article 9 of the Model OECD Convention, which is the basis of the arm's length principle. No? Ilang oras na tayo, Hari?
1 hour and 7 minutes.
Okay, so we still have 53 minutes, no? Kasi introduction pa lang po tayo. Introduction pa lang tayo dito sa laws sa US. Yun yung kagandahan, no? Kasi sa pagbabasa kasi po natin ng transfer pricing cases, mas lalong nare-refine yung knowledge natin about transfer pricing, especially on the application, no? So, bakit natin pinag-aaralan yung history ng transfer pricing law in the US? Because i-resolve natin itong Altera Corporation. This is a case also in the US, no? So how did they apply? And for your information, yung mga jurisprudence po ng US can be applied in the Philippines, no? So nasa ano natin 'yan? Nasa batas din natin 'yan na kaya yung mga practitioner, pag nagbasa na sila ng mga jurisprudence, binabasa din yung US jurisprudence, no? And in fact, sa mga libro natin, nandiyan din yung mga references ng mga US cases. Okay. So 1994 and 1995, Treasury issued new regulations that define the arm's length standard as a result-oriented, no? So ano yung result-oriented? Anong pinapakita niya? Resulta, no? So meaning that the goal is parity in taxable income rather than parity in the method of application itself, no? So ano yun? Pag result-oriented ka, ano ba yung resulta ng ginawa mong comparability, no? So ano siya? Parity in taxable income, hindi yung parity in the method of allocation, no? Okay. So a control transaction meets the arm's length standard if the result of the transactions are consistent with the results that would have been realized if uncontrolled taxpayers had engaged in the same transaction under the same circumstances, the arm's length result. The arm's length standard remained the standard to be applied in every case, no? Hanggang ngayon. Kaya alam nyo, tinitingnan ko rin yung evolution ng transfer pricing sa OECD, no? I try to look at dito sa mga bago nilang tax talk policy. Kasi international yan eh. Diyan po nagmumula yung ating mga tax laws, no? Yung mga tax laws ng buong mundo sa kanila yan nagmumula. Kasi, why? They are an unstacked non-profit corporations na funded sila ng mga malalaking bansa. At anong ginagawa? They are trying to make a better policy daw for a better lives, no? So, para hindi maging complicated, mahirap yung pagsunod ng mga policies, nire-refine po nila yan. Ang nakita ko, the transfer pricing is here to stay pa. Kaya sabi ko, kaya nung panahon na nalaman ko yung transfer pricing, at tinututukan ko yung transfer pricing, I calculate already, na sabi ko, kung tutukan ko itong transfer pricing, will there still be transfer pricing after 20 years? No? So, tiningnan ko yung mga trends, tiningnan ko yung hanggang ngayon, nandyan pa rin. Kaya nga sabi ko, even up to 20 years pa, nandyan pa rin yung transfer pricing. Kasi, syempre, isipin mo, nandyan pa ba to? Kasi, you will exert too much effort for transfer pricing. So, meron pa ba to after 20 years? Kasi sabi ko, the most na abutin ko kung buhay pa ako is 20 years, no? Kasi by the time, 80 plus ako. Sabi ko, the most ko na yun na number. Is there still transfer pricing habang buhay pa ako? No? So, I feel there is still. Why? Kasi hanggang ngayon, major topic pa rin sa OECD ang transfer pricing at saka hindi pa yon, nire-refine pa nila yung profit split method. No? Kasi yung profit split method, cuts all na yun eh, ang mga provisions ng mga methods ng transfer pricing. Why? Kasi kung hindi na applicable lahat, comparable uncontrolled price method, resale price method, cost plus method, transactional net margin method, ang bagsak lahat yan nasa profit split. No? Okay. So, yung regulations po sa US also set forth the methods by which income could be allocated among related parties in a manner consistent with the arm's length standard. So, 1995 also, regulations provide the intangible development cost, including all of the costs incurred by a controlled participant related to the intangible development area. So, anong issue dito sa Altera? Kung kasama ba yung stock-based compensation sa research and development, no? So, sa 1995 regulation, dinefine nila yung intangible development cost, no? Yun, kasama yan yung research and development, no? All the cost. So, kasama yung stock-based compensation. Siyempre, kasama, kasi, anong sabi dito? All the cost incurred by the controlled participant related to the intangible development area. Okay. By contrast to the 1994 regulation, the 1995 regulation consistent with the 1986 conference report implemented the commensurate with income standard in the context of cost-sharing arrangement by requiring that controlled participants in the qualified cost-sharing arrangement share all costs incurred that are related to the development of intangibles in proportion to their shares of the reasonable anticipated benefits attributable to that development. No? Compensatory tax options under Section 482, 67, Federal Regulations at 48998. No? So, kasama yung stock options, compensatory tax options, so kasama. So neither the Tax Reform Act nor the implementing regulations address allocation of employee stock compensation, which is the issue in this dispute. So ibig sabihin pala, noong 1995, hindi pa siya kasama, no? So the omission was unsurprising given that the practice did not develop on a major scale until the 1990s, no? Okay. Beginning 1997, the Secretary interpreted that all cost language to include stock-based compensation, meaning controlled taxpayers had to share the cost and associated deductions of providing employee stock compensation. So, yun yung Silings Inc. versus Commissioner. Pero, anong nirule ng court dito? That the Silings Inc. is not applicable in this case. No? So, 2003. 2003, actually, ito yung case na ng Altera, 2003 to 2006 ito no? So, in 2003, Treasury issued the cost-sharing regulations that are challenged in this case. Treasury intended for the 2003 amendments to clarify rather than to overhaul the 1994 and 1995 regulations. Okay. So, clarification were twofold. First, amendment directly classified employee stock compensation as a cost to be allocated between the QCSA or Qualified Cost Sharing Arrangement participants. Compensatory tax options under Section 482 proposed 67 Federal Regulations at 48998. Section 1.482-7AD2. And the coordinating amendments clarified Treasury's belief that the cost-sharing regulations, including Section 1.482-7A-D2, operate to produce an arm's length result. No? So, compensatory stock options under Section 482 proposed 67 Federation regulations. No? Okay. So, ano naman yung Section 1.4827A provides that costs shared by related parties to a QCSA are not subject to IRS reallocation for tax purposes if each entity share of the intangible property development cost equal its entities reasonably anticipated benefits, no? So, Section 1.482-7AA3 incorporated and coordinates with the arms length standard. Ano yung sinasabi niya dito? The qualified cost-sharing arrangement. Bakit po natin pinag-aaralan itong lahat ng mga batas about cost-sharing? Kasi po ito yung issue dyan sa Altera, no? Itong pinag-uusapan natin na case. Kasi later we will come to the issue of the case and how it is being resolved, no, by the court. Okay, so a qualified cost-sharing arrangement produces results that are consistent with an arm's length result, no? So yun yung sabi niya. If and only if such controlled participants share of the cost as determined under paragraph D of this section of intangible development under the qualified cost-sharing arrangement equals its share of reasonably anticipated benefits attributable to such development, no? So kasama o hindi kasama? Okay. If and only if its controlled participants share of the cost, no, as determined under paragraph D of this section of intangible development under the qualified cost-sharing arrangement equals its share of reasonably anticipated benefits attributable to such development. So yan yung isang area na kailangan i-apply mo yung arm's length principle. Bakit? Kasi 'di ba sabi na natin qualified sharing arrangement ito. So the members contribute to the development of the program. Na-develop na yung program, no, naging successful. So paano ngayon yung profit sharing, no? So anong sinasabi dito? The cost-sharing arrangement equals the share of reasonably anticipated benefits attributable to such development, no? So, ano yun? Kung magkano yung benefits mo, magkano yung binigay sa iyo, yan din dapat yung halaga na ibabayad sa iyo. Kasi, reasonable yan dahil nagkaroon ka ng contribution. So, kung malaki yung contributions mo, dapat malaki din yung benefits na ibibigay sa iyo. Kung maliit, dapat maliit din, no? So, yan po yung sinasabi sa qualified cost sharing arrangement. Okay. We're talking of the 2003 na regulations, ha? Kasi makikita natin dito, panalo si Altera dito. Kasi ano pa lang to, Court of Appeals, hindi pa dumating sa Supreme Court. Hindi pa to tapos na kaso, no? Yung Altera Corporation versus CIR. Okay. So, a qualified cost-sharing arrangement produces results that are consistent with an arm's length result. Okay. So, consistent with the arm's length result now. If and only if each controlled participant share of the cost as determined under paragraph D of this section of intangible development under the qualified cost sharing arrangement equals its share of reasonably anticipated benefits attributable to such development. No? So, ano daw yung cost sharing arrangement na qualified? The controlled participant's share of the cost, no? Equals also the share of the anticipated benefits. Okay. Okay, so paano niya i-allocate yung stock-based compensation? No? Okay. Paano niya i-allocate? Controlled participants' operating expenses include all costs attributable to compensation, including stock-based compensation as used in this section. The term stock-based compensation means any compensation provided by a controlled participant to an employee or independent contractor in the form of equity instruments, options to acquire stock options. Ito na yung sa stock-based compensation na. At sino lang yung makaka-avail dito? Usually yung mga officers or employees. Stock options or rights with respect to or determined by reference to equity instruments or stock options, including but not limited to property to which Section 421 83 applies and stock options to which Section 421 applies, regardless of whether ultimately settled in the form of cash, stock, or other property. Okay, so yun po yung sinabi niya noong 2003 na opinion. Okay. So the regulations and the procedure employed in adopting them form the basis of the present controversy. Okay. Wala pa rin?
Wala pa rin.
Okay. Dali lang kasi inom lang ako. Meron pa tayong viewers.
Meron po. 7 videos.
Okay. Meron din namang mga pasilip-silip lang eh. Kasi na ano naman nila na live. Okay? Okay. Next na issue po dito is the Altera Corporations and Subsidiaries tax liability for the year 2004 through 2006. So remember, meron tayong 2003 na regulations. No? So, anong nagiging issue dito? Yung 2004 through 2006 na tax liability po ng Altera. So, ano nang ginagawa ng Altera dito? Design, manufacture, marketed, and sold programmable logic devices, which are electronic components that are used to build circuits. So, if you try to think about the product of the Altera, talagang ano siya, research and development talaga yung malaking puhunan niya. Why? Kasi hindi ka naman pwedeng gumawa nito mga programmable logic devices without so much research and development cost. But of course, kung gamitin natin yung accounting standards on how to value dito po sa mga research and development, anong gagawin natin? We have to capitalize kasi nagde-develop na ng product. We cannot claim that as an outright expense. We have to capitalize, no? Okay. So in May of 1997, Altera entered into a cost-sharing agreement with one of its foreign subsidiaries, Altera International Inc., a Cayman Island corporation. Altera International, which had been incorporated earlier that year. Ito na yung issue. Tungkol na to sa income ha. Yung kanina, stock-based compensation. Yung issue number 2 is about the income naman ng Altera na singift niya doon sa Cayman Island. No? So, issue number 2. Okay. So, in May of 1997, Altera entered into a cost-sharing agreement with one of its foreign subsidiaries, Altera International Inc., a Cayman Island Corporations. Ano ba yun nandyan sa Cayman? Cayman is a tax haven country. No? Bakit? Kasi napakaliit lang ng tax niya or sometimes no tax at all. Okay. Altera International, which had been incorporated earlier that year, meaning noong 1997, Altera granted to Altera International a license to use and exploit Altera's pre-existing intangibles property everywhere in the world except the United States and Canada. Actually, ito yung mga ginagawa ng majority, no, ng mga multinationals na lahat ng pre-existing intangibles ibenta nila, ilagay nila sa isang company which is also a related party. Okay. In exchange, Altera International paid royalties to Altera. No? Kasi anong ginawa dito? Nag-form ng subsidiary ang Altera. No? Gumawa siya ng company sa Cayman Island. Tapos doon niya lahat in-exploit yung pre-existing nila ng mga intangible properties. No? Para gamitin yon in the world except the United States and Canada. No? So, since Altera, gumawa na siya ng another company, the Altera International, no? So, nagbabayad siya ngayon ng royalties, no? So, the parties agreed to pool the resources to share research and development. Ito na, gumawa ng isang corporations, nandun na sa kanya lahat ng pre-existing na intangible properties. So, meaning, nandun na sa kanya yung kita. Okay. So, anong nangyayari? The Altera International paid royalties to Altera. No? Pero mo, may ginawa kang isang company na bago. No? Tapos, dito mo na channel, dito mo na binigay yung mga payment mo para kay Altera. No? So, the parties agreed to pool the resources to share research and development cost in proportion to the benefits anticipated from new technologies. No? So the question in this appeal is whether Treasury was permitted to tax liability purposes to reallocate the cost of employee stock-based compensation. No? So yun yung issue. No? So yung research and development cost, in proportion ba siya sa benefits anticipated from new technologies? Okay. So, Altera na IRS agreed to an advanced pricing agreement covering 1997-2003. Kaya nga po yung nagiging issue dito is 2004 to 2006 na lang. Bakit? Kasi 1997 to 2003, 6 years yan, no? Mayroong advanced pricing agreement na ginawa yung Altera. So, ano yung advanced pricing agreement na yan? Para yung ruling na tama yung transfer pricing mo na transfer pricing scheme na ginagamit mo in the transfer of your properties, halimbawa, no? Okay, so pursuant to this agreement, Altera shared with Altera International stock-based compensation cost as part of the shared research and development cost. No? So, napakaliwanag. Ang stock-based compensation niya is part of the shared research and development cost. No? So, after the Treasury regulations were amended in 2003, Altera and Altera International amended their cost-sharing agreement to comply with the modified regulations, continuing to share employee stock compensation cost. No? Okay. Anong oras na?
1 hour 30 minutes.
20?
30.
30?
Apo.
Okay. So, wala pang ano?
Wala pa rin yung
Okay. May viewers pa.
meron pa po.
Ilan?
8 viewers.
Okay. Sige. Okay, so, anong question po dito? The question in this appeal is whether Treasury was permitted for tax liability purposes to reallocate the cost of employee stock-based compensation, no? So, biro mo yung Treasury na ang mag-reallocate ng cost ng employee stock-based compensation, no? So, Altera and the IRS agreed to an advance pricing agreement covering 97 to 2003, so 6 years. So, pursuant to this agreement, Altera shared with Altera International stock-based compensation cost as part of the shared R&D cost, no? So, after the Treasury regulations were amended in 2003, Altera and Altera International amended their cost-sharing agreement to comply with the modified regulations, continuing to share employee stock compensation cost, no? Kasi ang employee stock compensation in this case, hindi sinama ni Altera, no? So the agreement was amended again in 2005 following the tax court opinion in Silings Inc. and Consolidated Subsidiaries versus Commissioner. So, which involved a challenge to the 1994-95 cost-sharing regulations. The parties agreed to suspend the payment of any portion of cost share to the extent such payment relates to the inclusion of stock-based compensation in research and development costs unless and until a court upheld the validity of the 2003 cost-sharing regulations. The following provision explains Altera's reasoning. Ito naman yung reasoning ng Altera. No? The arm's length standard controls the determination of cost to be shared by controlled participants, no, in a qualified cost-sharing arrangement should also apply to Treasury Regulations 1.482.7D2 as amended by TD 9088 and the parties' inclusion of stock-based compensation in research and development cost pursuant to amendment. I would be contrary to the arm's length standard, no? Okay. So ito naman yung research and development related stock-based compensation cost on their consolidated 2004 to 2007. So yung 2003, 1997 to 2003, di ba? Covered siya ng APA, Advanced Pricing Arrangement, no? So kaya ang natira dito 2004 na lang to 2007, no? Federal income tax returns. Ito yung findings, no? So kaya may notice of deficiency yung IRS, no? So 2004, 2005, 2006 and 2007. So Altera timely filed petitions in the court. The parties filed cross motions for summary judgment and the tax court granted Altera's motion. Okay. Anong sinabi ng Altera dito? Na yung okay. Yung Altera, kasi inassess na siya noong 2004, 5 and 6 and 7, no? So, Altera timely filed a petition in the tax court. O, kaya nga, nagkaroon sila ng case dito sa tax court, no? The parties filed cross motions for summary judgment and the tax court granted Altera's motion. No? So, sitting in bank, the tax court held that 1.482-7A dito is invalid under the Administrative Procedure Act, no? 5 USC Section 701 was 701 to 706, Altera and Subsidiaries versus Commissioner. Okay. Hindi natin matapos to ng 2 hours, no? Anyway, ituloy natin to next Thursday. Kailan ba tayo ulit dito, Hari? Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Okay. Excuse me. So, anong ginawa ng Altera dito? Timely filed a petition in the tax court, no? Okay. So, the parties filed cross motions for summary judgment, and the tax court granted Altera's motion. Okay. Sitting in bank, the tax court held that Section 1.4827A dito is invalid under the Administrative Procedure Act, no, APA. The tax court unanimously determined that the commissioner allocation of income and expenses between related entities must be consistent, no, with the arm's length standard. Okay. Excuse me. That the arm's length standard is not met unless the commissioner allocation can be compared to an actual transactions between unrelated entities. The tax court reasoned that the commissioner could not require related parties to share stock compensation cost because the commissioner had not considered any unrelated party transaction in which the parties shared such cost. The tax court held that the agency decision-making process was fundamentally flawed because it rested on speculation rather than on hard data and expert opinions. And it failed to respond to significant public comments, particularly those pointing out uncontrolled cost-sharing arrangement in which the entities did not share stock compensation cost. No? Okay. So yun yung mga flows daw sa law, no? Okay. The tax court decision rested largely on its own opinion in silings, in which it determined that the arm's length standard mandates a comparability analysis. In its decision in this case as well, the tax court suggested that the commissioner cannot require related entities to share stock compensation cost unless and until the commissioner locates uncontrolled transactions in which these costs are shared. Okay. Ano yung holdings ng court? No, there are 5. Number 1, the 2003 amendments constitutes a final legislative rule subject to the requirements of the APA or Advanced Pricing Arrangement. Number 2, Motor Vehicle Manufacturers Association of the United States, Inc. versus State Farm Mutual Automobile Insurance Company. So, 463 US 29, 1983. So, may 2003 na tayo na regulations, may 1993. So, ano naman ang pinrovide dito? Okay. Okay. So, ano pa yung number 3 na holdings ng tax court? Treasury did not support adequately its decision to allocate the cost of employee stock compensation between related parties. Number 4, Treasury's procedural regulatory deficiencies were not harmless and is invalid under the APA or Advanced Pricing Arrangement. Okay. So, next issue is ano ba yung task ng court? In this appeal is to determine whether Treasury's 2003 regulations are lawful. In the context of the argument made in this case, we evaluate the validity of the agency's regulations under both Chevron and State Farm, which provide for related but distinct standards for reviewing rules promulgated by administrative agencies. No? State Farm is used to evaluate whether a rule is procedurally defective as a result of flaws in the agency's decision-making process. No? So Chevron, by contrast, is generally used to evaluate whether the conclusion reached as a result of that process, an agency's interpretation of a statutory provision it administers is reasonable. A litigant challenging a rulemaking may challenge it under State Farm, Chevron, or both. No? So Altera challenges both the procedural adequacy of the APA process and the substance of the regulations. No? So yan ang kine-question ni Altera. Okay. So ano ba itong Chevron analysis? This is one case that they mentioned, no? So we first turn to Chevron analysis. Under Chevron, we first apply the traditional rules of statutory construction to determine whether Congress has directly spoken to the precise question at issue. No? 467 US at 842, we start with the plain statutory text, and when deciding whether the language is plain, we must read the words in their context and with a view to their place in the overall statutory scheme. No? So in addition, we examine the legislative history, statutory structure, and other traditional aids of statutory interpretation in order to ascertain congressional intent. No? Okay. Okay. So, ito yung footnote dito, no? So, ito yung explanations. We afforded the parties the opportunity to file optional supplemental briefs on the question whether the 6-year statute of limitation under 28 U.S.C. Section 241A, which generally applies to procedural challenges to regulations under the APA, applies to this case. The Commissioner responded that it had waived this non-jurisdictional defense by failing to assert it to the tax court. We agree with the parties that the Commissioner waived the defense, no? Day versus McDonough, 547 U.S. 198210 and 11/2006. No? Should a state intelligently choose to waive a statute of limitations defense, a district court would not be at liberty to disregard that choice. No? Even if a claim has expired under state statute of limitations. Okay. So the defendant can still waive his affirmative defense. Okay. Okay. Ano naman yung argument mo ni Altera, no? Altera argues that the statute by its term cannot apply to stock-based compensation. According to Altera, stock-based compensation is not transferred between parties because only pre-existing intangibles can be transferred. No? So, for Altera, Treasury has exceeded the delegation of authority apparent from the plain text of the statute. No? Okay.
Tanong madam.
Okay. Sino?
Si Ma'am Ferreira.
Sige, shout out.
Ang tanong niya po ma'am, ma'am about transfer pricing, ano po ang assessment mo dito? May cargo forwarding sa Korea.
Okay.
Napadala niya ang balikbayan box dito sa Philippines.
Okay.
Bayad na po ang lahat ng freight sa Korea.
Okay.
Tatanggapin ng cargo forwarding dito sa Philippines.
Okay.
Ang receiver ng balikbayan box ay wala nang babayaran ng any amount sa cargo forwarding sa Pinas. Ano po possible income ng cargo forwarding sa Pinas?
So wala na siyang i-receive. Dapat bayaran siya ng parent company niya nandoon sa Taiwan. Tama ba?
Opo.
Saan galing? Sa Taiwan. Since pagdating dito sa sa Korea, kasi ang income doon, binayaran na ng Korea. So, sino dapat ang magbayad sa cargo forwarding dito sa Pilipinas? Yung Korea. But of course, hindi niya babayaran kasi related party niya yun. So, yan ang typical na example ng transfer price. Kasi, dito sa Pilipinas, wala siyang i-declare na income kasi hindi siya binabayaran. Pero ano dapat? For transfer pricing purposes, dapat may income siya dito sa Pilipinas. And how much is that? Yun yung fee na available in the independent parties. Magkano ba yung sinisingil ng hindi related parties? Kasi in your case, typical yan na related party. No? So, papaano mo ngayon i-compute yung income ng freight delivery dito sa Pilipinas? Kasi nga, hindi naman siya binabayaran. Kasi siya, ang may-ari sa kanya, yun din yung sa Korea. At na doon na sa Korea yung singil, no? So, paano mo siya ngayon i-compute ng income niya dito sa Pilipinas? Ang sabi natin, you have to compare that company na may freight services with the companies na independent parties, hindi related parties, also engage in the same business with that of the freight companies. So, ano yun? Halimbawa, paano ba yung singilan ng forwarder dito sa Pilipinas ng halimbawa sa mga imported goods, no? So, i-deliver nila, i-forward nila yan doon sa consignee. So, kung magkano yung sinisingil nila, yan din yung dapat na income na i-declare ng freight forwarder dito sa Pilipinas. So, paano malalaman yun? Malalaman yun sa record ng BOC or ng Bureau of Customs. So, kailan yan kukunin ng BIR during the transfer pricing audit. Kasi hindi naman po nila gagawin yan na wala pang audit. No? So, during the transfer pricing audit. Okay?
Yun lang po yung tanong.
So, magbabayad din po siya dito sa Pilipinas. Pero, ang basis niya is the income of the freight companies doing that same freight business dito sa Pilipinas. Kahit na sabihin mo pa na wala talaga siyang tinatanggap, still, pwede pa rin siyang compute ng income. No? Kasi ang tawag doon, service income niya. And madali lang siya i-determine. Okay. So, anong sabi ng Altera dito? Hindi raw na-transfer yung stock-based compensation between parties because pre-existing intangibles lang daw ang pwedeng i-transfer. No? Pero, ano dapat, ang hindi lang ina-argue kulang yung argument ng Altera, no? Kasi, sabi niya, ang tinatransfer lang daw yung pre-existing intangibles. So, yung stock-based compensation is not transferred. So, tama ba yun na yung stock-based compensation is not transferred? Hindi, kasi it follows kung nasaan yung intangibles mo na dine-develop, it follows nandoon yung cost mo. No? So, hindi na-persuade, hindi naniwala yung court. Why? Sabi niya, when parties entered into a qualified cost-sharing arrangement, they are transferring future distribution rights to intangibles. No? So, gumawa na ng sarili niyang reasoning yung tax authority. So, ano yun? About future distribution rights to intangibles. Bakit future distribution rights? Kasi tinransfer na yung intangibles, no? At ang issue is, how are you going to value the intangibles? Or ano-ano yung mga cost na kasama dun sa intangibles. No? Okay. So, the present-day transfer of those rights provides the main incentive for entering into QCSA. The right to distribute intangibles to be developed later is itself one right in the bundle of property rights that exist at the time the parties enter into a qualified cost-sharing arrangement. No? So, yun yung right to distribute the intangibles to be developed later. Okay. Anong oras na?
1 hour 51 minutes.
So, 9 minutes na lang tayo. Okay. Yung mga history ito yung mga dinidiscuss. Kaya, yung dati, yung mga cases, di ba, napakahaba pa i-resolve. Ngayon, hindi na ganito kahaba ang nire-require ng court, no? May mga maximum na lang na number of pages yung gagawin mo pagdating sa resolution. Okay. So actually, ang dami pang issues dito. Kasi during the trial, batuhan niya na sila ng issue, no? Sabi ng isa, ito yung issue. Sasagot naman ng isa. Okay. Napakahaba pa nitong case na to kaso lang. Okay. So, anong decision po dito? The decision of the lower court was reversed by the trial appellate court, no? Okay. So, anong decision po dito ng court ito po sa case. In sum, we disagree with the task court that the 2003 regulations are arbitrary and capricious under the standard of review imposed by the APA or the APA. So, since ano yung issue nila na isa kanina, the regulations daw are arbitrary and capricious. No? Okay. Okay. Treasury understood Section 482 authorized it to employ a purely internal commensurate with income approach where comparable transactions are not comparable. No? So, in light of the statute's plain text and legislative history, yun yung inisa-isa natin kanina, yung legislative history po ng US, Treasury also reasonably concluded that Congress intended to hone the definition of the arm's length standard so that it could work to achieve an arm's length result. Okay. So instead of forcing application of particular comparability method. Okay, so Treasury's understanding of its power to use methodologies other than pure transactional comparability analysis was reasonable, and we defer to its interpretation under Chevron. No? So the commissioner did not exceed the authority delegated to him by Congress in issuing the regulation. So, anong sabi nila dito? Okay, so hindi raw sila nag-exceed ng authority. Okay. Okay. So, yung issue dito na yung Section 482 is invalid, sinagot na rin po ng court, no? Tsaka yung so, anong nangyari dito? Panalo yung Altera dito sa appeal na to kasi doon sa una, hindi siya nanalo pagdating na sa tax appeal, no? Panalo yung Altera dito. So, ano yung decision ng court dito, no? So, panalo yung Altera. But since this is a case na hindi pa to tapos, no? So, ang susunod dito is the Supreme Court na, no? Nag-appeal na yung IRS dito sa case ng Altera, no? Kasi pagka nag-decision na yung court sa case ng Altera, ang dami na rin mga cases na madidesisyon na rin kaagad, no? Kasi precedent itong Altera on the other cases, no? So 9 o'clock na, 2 hours na.
58 minutes mo na.
So, dalawa pa, no? So, ito yung ano niya eh. Ito yung decision ng court dito eh. Okay, so anong sabi niya? Hindi reasonable. So, ibig sabihin, reasonable yung Section 482, no? Na, sa transfer pricing. Okay. Anong sabi po dito? The 1986 amendment focused specifically on intangibles, and it gave Treasury the ability to respond to rapid changes in the high-tech industry. The broad language of Section 482 reflects an intentional effort to confer the flexibility necessary to forestall obsolescence. In the modern economy, employee stock options are integral to research and development. So na research arrangement, liwanag nung how the Court of Tax Appeal resolved this case. Kasi sa doon pa lang sa number one issue natin kung kasama ba yung mga stock options sa determination ng research and development cost. So, sinasabi dito na kasama. No? So, in fact, in Altera's 2015 annual report, its stock-based compensation cost equaled nearly 5% of total revenue. Imagine, no? So, Altera Corp annual report for the fiscal year ended December 31, 2014, Form 10K. Simply speaking, the rise in employees' stock compensation is an economic development that Treasury cannot ignore without rejecting its obligations. Okay. Okay, so balikan natin. Ano po ba itong Altera? Altera is a manufacturer of logic devices. At ano na ngayon yung Altera? Ang ownership niya is by Intel na, no? So, binili siya ng Intel. At this is a transfer pricing case. Ano yung mga issue dito? Yung number one, yung determination na yung stock option is part of the research and development. No? Okay, so yun yung isang issue po na na-resolve dito. At sa amin ng court, stock-based compensation should be included as part of the research and development. No? Kasi as research and development, nagde-develop ng product, it should be capitalized and it should be amortized later. Okay. So ano po yung decision ng court on the issue ng stock-based compensation? It should form part of the research and development. No? Okay. So, yung mga next po natin na discussion sa Wednesday, mamili pa ako ng mga cases in transfer pricing ng mga what do you call this, na klase ng mga cases, celebrated cases, no? And titingnan natin kung ano yung mga issues nila and how the court resolve those issues, no? Kung ano yung mga typical nila na mga findings and kung ano yung mga ginawa nila, no, matutuwa kayo kasi kung ano mga ginawa ng taxpayers, no, sa mga cases na yan, just to minimize the payment of taxes, no, and how the court also recharacterize o kaya consider those transactions as sham transactions and therefore should be disregarded. Okay, so 2 hours na.
Yes po.
Okay, so thank you very much po at lalo na sa ating mga subscribers, no? Alam niyo pagka YouTubers ka pala, doon mo malalaman yung kahalagahan ng mga subscribers mo. Why? Kasi sila na yung sumusubaybay sa iyo at sila na yung tumutulong na pag may in-upload ka, so nandiyan na sila kaagad, nakatingin, no? So that is something na you look forward as a YouTuber, no? Kasi para sa akin na kahit konti lang yung subscriber mo o kahit na marami, ang importante dyan na somebody appreciates yung ginagawa mong effort. Kahit sabihin mo na konti lang yung views mo, compared doon sa iba na milyon-milyon, no? Pero yung joy na happiness na nararamdaman mo, same pa rin yan, no? Kaya nga ako sabi ko, it doesn't matter na 1,000 yung subscriber mo o hundreds. Basta you enjoy yung mga contents mo at saka yung mga ini-impart mo ng mga knowledge, then satisfied ka na doon. No? That's a kind of remuneration na tinatanggap mo rin as a YouTuber. No? Sometimes non-monetary. And so we will continue on Wednesday, no? Sa bagay, kulang-kulang pa itong natin sa Altera kasi napakahabang case nito, no? So, bago tayo siguro mag-discuss ng bagong case on Wednesday, i-highlight pa natin kung ano talaga itong nangyari dito sa Altera, no? So, with that, I would like to say thank you and good evening, everyone.